Hey, welcome! Today, we're getting to the bottom of where pretty much every disease we know of actually comes from. And spoiler alert, it doesn't start in our organs or in our blood. It starts inside the most unbelievably complex factory on the entire planet, the human cell. And to really get how things go so wrong, we first have to understand the blueprint for how they're supposed to go so right.
So let's just start with the biggest question of all. Let's forget about symptoms, forget about organs for a second. Where does disease, on a fundamental, microscopic level, actually kick off?
It begins right here, inside this tiny, bustling metropolis. This is the eukaryotic cell. It's the foundation for all animal and plant life. Literally every single process, every function, and every single breakdown in our bodies gets its start right inside these walls.
All right, so here's the game plan for our tour. We're going to start with the basics, the cell's foundation. Then we're taking a trip to the command center. After that, we'll check out the assembly line, see the power and security systems, and finally, we'll see how this whole society of cells can break down and lead to disease.
Okay, first up, the foundation. The big idea to grab onto here is that cells are not loners. They act like a social organism, constantly talking, constantly cooperating to keep our entire body working as one.
So the star of our show today is the eukaryotic cell. You know, unlike simpler cells like bacteria, eukaryotes have a real-deal nucleus and a whole bunch of specialized departments. We call them organelles, each wrapped up in its own little membrane. And it's this organization that allows for all the incredible complexity we see.
All right, let's head straight to the top floor, the CEO's office. This is the command center for the whole operation, what we call the nucleus.
Yeah, CEO is the perfect way to think about it. The nucleus isn't just some dusty library holding our DNA blueprints. No way. It's an active command center. It's in charge of cell division, it manages DNA repair, and it's constantly sending out work orders via RNA that direct the entire factory floor.
So the CEO has sent out the new instructions. Where do they go? Well, they head straight to the factory floor, the cellular assembly line. This is where those blueprints get turned into actual products that do all the work.
And here's that assembly line in action. First, the instructions land at the ribosomes, which are like the little machines that actually build the proteins. From there, those brand new proteins get shuffled over to the rough ER to be assembled and folded into just the right shape. Nearby, you've got the smooth ER handling other gigs, like making hormones and getting rid of toxins. And then finally, everything arrives at the Golgi apparatus. Think of it as the cell's shipping department, where all the finished products are packaged up and sent out.
Of course, a factory this complicated needs a massive support crew, right? It's got to have power, a waste management team, and a really sophisticated security system just to keep the lights on and everything running smoothly.
And here are two of the absolute most critical players. On one side, you have the mitochondria, the power plants. They pull in oxygen and nutrients and just churn out ATP, the energy currency that fuels, well, everything the cell does. And on the other side, you've got the lysosomes. These guys are the recycling and sanitation crew, using these powerful enzymes to break down waste and tear apart old parts, keeping the whole factory clean and healthy.
Now, what about the factory walls? This is no simple brick wall. The plasma membrane is this smart, dynamic border. It's the security guard, the gatekeeper, and the communication hub all rolled into one.
I mean, think about all the hats this thing wears. It provides a physical barrier for protection, but it's also got all these channels and pumps that carefully control what gets in and out. It has receptors on the outside that get signals from hormones and then activate the cell. And on top of all that, it anchors itself to its neighbors so it can communicate directly. It's incredible.
And that right there brings us to the bigger picture. Because, no cell is an island. They're all part of this huge cooperative society, all working together to form our tissues, our organs, and, well, us.
So how do they all stick together?
Well, it's largely thanks to this stuff, the extracellular matrix, or ECM for short. It's this complex mesh that the cells actually build themselves. You can think of it like a biological scaffolding that gives tissues their structure and allows cells to move around and talk to each other.
And all that talk we mentioned happens in a few key ways. Sometimes it's direct physical contact, where cells literally have to touch. Other times, a cell will send out a chemical signal that only affects its immediate neighbors. That's called paracrine signaling. And then, for the long-distance calls, you've got hormonal signaling, where special cells release hormones that travel all the way through the bloodstream to reach targets far, far away. It's an amazingly complex network.
So, What happens when this perfectly tuned factory starts to go wrong? When the machines break down, the power fails, or that critical cellular conversation just stops? That, right there, is where disease begins.
And this quote from our source material just hits the nail on the head. Our health literally depends on our cells having a kind of chemical fondness for each other. When that conversation breaks down, the whole system becomes vulnerable.
And this right here, this is the critical idea for understanding disease. A single point of failure, a misfolded protein, a weak membrane, a signal that gets ignored. It doesn't just stay in one place. It sets off a cascade, a chain reaction of problems that can spread through the whole system. That's how a tiny error leads to a full-blown illness.
And this is a terrifying real-world example of that chain reaction. What you're looking at are cancer exosomes. Cancer cells actually hijack the normal communication system. They load up these little packages with corrupt, faulty messages and send them out to corrupt their neighbors, fueling tumor growth and helping the cancer spread. It's communication turned into a weapon.
And the fallout from this breakdown is just huge. When proteostasis, that's the cell's quality control for proteins, fails, you get the messed up proteins linked to diseases like Alzheimer's. When the lysosomes malfunction, that cleanup crew goes on strike and toxic gunk builds up, leading to awful diseases like Tay-Sachs. And when those communication signals get their wires crossed, you can get the uncontrolled growth we see in cancer. Every failure is just another link in that chain of disease.
So it all comes down to this. You simply can't understand the breakdown until you understand the blueprint. Every single disease process is, at its very core, just a deviation from the normal, incredible function of a healthy cell.
And that leaves us with one last really big thought. We've just seen how the health of our entire body hinges on this constant, incredibly complex cellular conversation. So the real question for all of us is, what are the best ways to protect it and keep our own cellular factories running smoothly for as long as we can?